Earlier this week, I think at the owners' meetings, the NFL announced a new player award that's going to roll out next year, and it's going to be called the Protector of the Year, which I believe is going to be given to the best offensive lineman of the year. So I like that a lot. I think it sheds visibility on one of the most important positions that's often overlooked, often underrated. I think this is great for fans to see, like for them to get visibility. Do you think that anyone on our offensive line has a shot of winning that division, winning that award?
So, look, as a former offensive lineman, it's about damn time we started getting some recognition. We don't get included in the Heisman Trophy conversations. Like Orlando Pace should have back in his college days. We don't get included in the MVP conversations. Shout out to all the quarterbacks and running backs that thank us every time that they win an award. We appreciate that. But it's about damn time that that we finally had something um, to recognize what we mean to the game of football, right? Like, they always say the only time you hear an offense, if you ever hear your name as an offensive lineman, it's never a good thing, right? Like, you don't want to be talked about. You don't want people to go back and watch Super Bowl, 2016 Super Bowl and say, damn, Jake Matthews had this, how many holding calls, right? Like, you never want to hear your name called as an offensive lineman because, again, it's never a good thing. So I think it's long overdue. There are a lot of NFL. I wish the NFL would go back and retroactively award that to offensive linemen throughout the history of the NFL, right? Because there are a lot of amazing offensive linemen who deserve that and who should have won that award. And so I guess better late than never. When you look at the offensive line here in Atlanta, I think that you've got Chris Lindstrom obviously is the guy that to me will be up for that award and should be as the best. He's taken over as the best guard in the NFL. And so for me, over Quentin Nelson, right? Nelson's had a bad couple of years. And to me, Chris Lindstrom has stepped up and taken that the reins and taken that bull by the horn. And so I think that's a guy that's going to be in the conversation, especially if the Falcons turn around like you and I think they will. I think Lindstrom could end up being the first ever recipient of that award. But don't sleep on Jake Matthews either, right? Like Jake Matthews, I think obviously he's been kind of the All Pro perennial, the Pro Bowl perennial. Like he's only made it a couple times, but he's been on the door quite a few times, right? He's been really good over the last 10 plus years with the organization, and so I love that they're finally doing this award. I think there are a lot of guys that will be worthy of it, but I hope that we're sitting here 6 months from now, 7 months from now, making a really strong case for a guy like Chris Lindstrom to be the first recipient of that award.
Do you think that tackles are going to have more visibility with this award, just given that blindside, right tackle, whatever, like they get more attention than someone like Lindstrom that's a guard?
So, I want to, well, one, I want to know who's voting on this award, right? Because that will determine how often does a guard or a center actually get love for this award. But yeah, I mean, generally it's going to be the left or the right tackle, depending on what quarterback it is. And so I like again, I want to who's voting on this. It better not be media members. Because I can tell you now, people like D. Orlando Ledbetter don't know what the fucking offensive tackle is, don't know what the fuck a guard is, right? Like people like him are absolutely like they have no business covering the game of football because they don't know what they're covering. So for me, I want to know who's voting on this award, and it should not be the same people that vote for the MVP award. It just shouldn't be. Because those dumbasses will give it to a running back, right? They'll give it to a guy. Well, he had a great chip block here in week 16. Let's give him the great protector award, right? So I want to know who's voting on that award more than anything, because for me that would determine um, how seriously that award is being taken. Because again, if it's just a bunch of media people voting on that award, it'll go to the wrong person every single year, almost like the MVP does.
And then speaking about our offensive line, Jeff, I know we obviously lost Dahlman to the Bears, but Ryan Newsel still hasn't signed his tenure, his what do you call it, his tender. But
Mm-hmm.
I think is it Jovan Gwynn that's the only center under contract that has snaps at that position. Is that our only center right now that under
So,
contract?
well, keep in mind that the Falcons, he's not even listed as a center, right? Like he's just listed as an offensive lineman, but he's the only person right now on the Falcons roster that has taken snaps at center in either college or the NFL. And so, yeah, like it's kind of quietly not been a story, right? Like nobody's, yeah, we lost Dahlman and everybody's like, oh, well, News will step in, even though if you watch this show, I told you guys a while ago that News was a big concern for me. One, because even though he only played 7 weeks, he still led the NFL among all centers in penalties. That's a big issue for me. And two, it was quite the step back from an offensive line standpoint, having him take over for Dahlman for that month and a half, right? And so, but if you were waiting on that guy, he still hasn't signed his tender. And yes, he's a restricted free agent, so the Falcons will have the last say in all of that. But we're going through mini camps, we're going through rookie mini camps, we're going through all of these phases of the summer, and before you know it, the end of July will be here when we're in camp, and you still don't have your starting center under contract. And that to me is a much bigger story than anybody's paying attention to right now. And it's actually kind of odd that nobody has asked these questions of this team of, hey, what's the plan at center? You lost Dahlman. Newsell's not under contract yet. You haven't had any meaningful conversations with a whole lot of guys over the last month. Like, what's going on with that position? As we work more into summer and you start getting into voluntary camps, involuntary, like all of those things that's going on, the Falcons just simply don't have a guy at center right now. And it honestly should be a lot more concerning to people than it actually is.
Do you think that David Andrews is still on the table for them? Like, do you think they're monitoring that situation?
Yeah, he's definitely still on the table. David Andrews is still on the table. Jalen Ramsey is still on the table. We have talked extensively about potential moves for them to make post June 1st, right? And not that David Andrews matters because he was cut, so there's not necessarily a move to be made there, other than you got to clear up some space to sign him. But he is absolutely still on the table. There's mutual interest there between the two parties. And maybe that's the route they go if he's healthy enough to pass a physical and gets cleared. But to me, that's almost a side point of the fuck are we doing at center, right? Like, how is the guy that you allegedly are going to turn to still not under contract? You still haven't gotten him to sign anything and come to an agreement with a deal. So again, maybe it's not as big of a deal as I think it is. But for me, as we head in here to the end of May, beginning of June, to me, it's still kind of it's almost a red flag as to why you don't have your starting center under contract, and hell, you don't even have a starting center under contract, right? Like that to me is a pretty big deal. Other than quarterback, that's the dude that touches the ball every fucking play, and that's a pretty important position that you want to have and make sure that he's here in your facility for all of your voluntary and involuntary activities that you have going on over the summertime.
I mean, for those of you that have listened to this podcast before, you know how we feel about the center position. It is one of the most important positions on the offensive line. You're making the calls, you're switching protections, and especially for a young QB, like Penix has only had 3 NFL games under his belt. Having a good center is everything. I hope that they have a ace up their sleeve, because if they're kind of, being wishy-washy about this position or not taking it seriously, I think that could be a big problem for us down the line.
I completely agree. And just real quick as a sidetrack, man, shout out to everybody, watching live. Daniel checking in, Alexander checking in. Chase says it's the first time he's joined us. We appreciate you, Chase. New era. I know this is like your second or third time checking in. I'm not really sure why you're upset with me calling people retarded, although I haven't said it today. Xavier checks it in, then Eric says, not having a center concerns him as well. So appreciate you guys all not only watching, but chiming in there on the feed as well. We appreciate you. And yeah, it should be concerning to a lot more people than it is, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And, you talked about Ramsey as a potential 6-1 move. Cam Wolf was talking about this on NFL Network earlier this week, too, that not only are the Falcons interested, but I think that he's getting interest with the Rams, going back to his old team. And also, the Panthers are in play, too, because I think Algier Evero, the Panthers DC, was in LA when the Rams won a Super Bowl with Ramsey. So watch for the Panthers showing interest in him as well. Obviously, he loves Coach Morris, so we're gonna be a favorite in that too. But Jeff, how do you like? Let's say this goes down, right? And for those of you that don't know about post 6-1 versus pre 6-1, whatever, when you cut a player, you can designate them as a post 6-1 cut. But when you trade for a player, you can't have that designation in advance. You have to actually physically trade for them after that point. When you do that, the salary cap dead hit or whatever, it could be spread out over a couple of years instead of it coming all at one. But Jeff, I want to ask you, we drafted Bowman, we drafted Watts, and I know that, Ramsey's more of a corner than a safety now. Eventually we might move him to safety. Where would he fit in with the Falcons, having Mike Hughes, obviously AJ Terrell? Where do you see, if we did trade for Ramsey, how do you see his role being with us in 2025?
So one, let's just understand the Falcons are not going to get into a bidding war, right? So if the Dolphins want to make this into a bidding war, I don't know if Ramsey has a no trade clause or not. I have no idea what his contract looks like. But if this is going to turn into a bidding war, the Falcons are not going to. They're just simply not going to outbid anybody. That's not what this is going to be for them. If they do end up making that trade for Jalen Ramsey, he would come in and be corner number 2. Opposite AJ Terrell here for a year or two. There have obviously been talks of him, kind of moving to safety position, kind of like Charles Woodson did at the end of his career to extend that career. And it may not be a bad move. But that's probably a year or two down the road. But I think the biggest impact, and we've talked about this on previous episodes, the biggest impact that dude is going to have is in the locker room. When you have a Super Bowl winning player enter your locker room, it immediately changes the aura and the attitude of that locker room, because you've got a guy who didn't just win a Super Bowl ring, who was a big part of winning a Super Bowl ring, right? Like, this was not a long snapper who spent 8 years in LA and his last year there before they cut him for veteran money reasons won a Super Bowl. This is a guy that's an all-pro and is on pace to get considerable Hall of Fame votes. I'm not saying he will be a Hall of Fame player, but he's on his way to getting there and to being there. He changes the locker room on the defensive side of the ball. So for all of the reasons you may not want to bring that guy in, there's just as many, if not more, reasons to bring a guy like that in, because he changes the trajectory of that locker room and he helps establish a culture that Raheem Morris is trying to establish. And so for me, if you have an opportunity to make a trade, you have to go trade Kyle Pitts and a 3rd round pick, which is what they gave up to go trade for him to begin with, then that's what you do, right? Because he changes who you are as a franchise and he gives you instant credibility with other guys around the league. And so for me, it's a no-brainer. But I think to answer your question, I think he comes in, he is a corner year 1, year 2, and then he starts to make that transition. Yes, you've got a guy like Bowman, you've got Watts, you've got young guys. We don't know who they are. Right. So if you can help solidify that secondary with a guy who we know what we're getting, then that's exactly what you do. And by the way, he can only help their development. You bring a veteran like that in, he's not going to worsen their development. He's not going to lengthen their development. He's not going to stunt their development. He's going to help develop them, and probably at a much faster rate than expected. So if they get an opportunity to do that, it's a no-brainer. Yes, they are still absolutely a team. I think also Washington is a team that you'll have to watch out for as well. Dan Quinn, even though, he may not have crossed paths, Dan Quinn is still a guy that defensive players love to play for. And you have a young core there in DC. So they're still going to be in play as well. So hopefully this is something that works out for the Falcons. I think it's a move that if the Falcons can make, they absolutely will. And again, there's a myriad of reasons to bring him in, and it's not always on the field of what he brings as a starter.
DQ is always going to be good as long as the offense is under control. The second the offense starts getting away from him, like if Cliff gets a head coaching job, I think that's where you have to watch to see how Quinn handles that, because that was the beginning of the end for him when Kyle Shanahan left, and then all of a sudden the offense started having issues. That's where he started so the defense started taking a step back there. Not right away, but you just saw the gradual deterioration there.
But why did the offense have issues though? because he was hiring the wrong morons to replace the guys he brought in. Dan Quinn is great at hiring his initial staff. He knocked it out of the park here in Atlanta, and he knocked it out of the park in D.C. It's to your point, right? When he's got to start replacing those guys that are leaving, he wants to bring in the buddy system, and that doesn't work. I mean, you look at all of the guys that he had here on his staff that are now NFL head coaches, and he was like, nope, I'm going to go to the AA meeting. I'm going to pull out Sark, right? Like, and you know, you can get mad at me for taking a shot at Sark. I don't give a damn. But that's what he did. He ignored all of the NFL guys, and he brought in a college guy, and it didn't work out. And yes, you can miss me with, oh, we were great. It wasn't the issue, blah, 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 blah. I don't give a damn what your opinion is on that. I just don't. Sark was not good for Atlanta, you know, and it maybe not. It honestly, and I've said this before, it wasn't necessarily Sark's fault. He didn't get to run his offense, and as many points as they put up, it still wasn't his. So, you know, Dan Quinn's issue is he's afraid to hire from within, which is crazy, because if you trust your hiring process, that should be a no-brainer.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, Jeff, we had Matt LaFleur on the staff ready to take over, but we let him walk. We had Mike McDaniel on the staff. We let him walk. Like, it's just, you know, we had all these offensive minds that, you know, worked with Kyle Shanahan, and that system's working. Hire within, trust your guys. I'm sure that LaFleur would have loved to take that job and done a really good job with Ryan. And by the way, for those of you that remember, in 2017, I kind of misspoke when I said Kyle Shanahan left and the defense took a step back. I want to take that back. The defense took a step back in 2018. In 2017, I actually think that defense was one of the best defenses we fielded in probably like the Matt Ryan era. That was really freaking good. If you guys remember that, this is the pre-Keanu Neal injury. Like, he was still playing really well. I mean, he wasn't even injured that year, but so I shouldn't even say pre-injury, but like, that D was really clicking in 17. It was our offense that was kind of stagnant and ultimately was our downfall that year. But you can argue that it was better than our Super Bowl year defense.
Absolutely. And by the way, shout out to Albert checking in as well. I said he finally made it, so we appreciate you guys as well.
And okay, one more thing that I wanted to hit, Jeff, is Tyler Algier. Okay, so with him, this is his last year before he hits free agency. We drafted him 3 years ago. The year before we got Bijan, he hit 1,000 rushing yards, played really well, right? And then the past 2 years, he's had over 600 rushing yards in each of the past 2 seasons. I think that when he becomes a free agent, ultimately the following year in 2026, if he has a backfield to himself, Jeff, I think there's an RB1 waiting to happen with Algier. I think he could go in, like, if Dallas traded for him, or even or another running back needy team, like, this guy can step in and play really well. Do you think that there's a shot that the Falcons trade him a year early, try to get compensation for him? Or is Tyler Algier, I love him, I hope he stays. Do you think that he's going to stay with us one more season in 2025?
You got to trade him. And I know that's going to hurt a lot of people's feelings, right? I mean, he's our version of Michael Turner. Okay, Michael Turner sat behind LT forever in San Diego, got an opportunity to come to Atlanta and exploded, right? And we've all seen Tyler Algier. I don't think there's anybody that's watching this. I don't think there's anybody that loves the Falcons that doesn't love Tyler Algier. He's the consummate professional. He's an absolute baller. He's absolutely a running back one for most teams in this league. He just happens to have come to Atlanta the year before they drafted a franchise-changing running back. You know, last year I joined you on your FF Metrics podcast, and I told you that it was going to be a 70-30, 65-35 split. And all of these other Falcons insiders talked about how it was going to be 50-50. What did it end up being? It ended up being 65-35. I told you what it was going to be. Tyler Algier is not a running back one for this franchise, and it's because of Bijan Robinson. And there's no argument to be made that it shouldn't be the case. Bijan Robinson is running back one on every team in the NFL, with the exception of maybe 2 or 3. Tyler Algier is running back one in probably 10 to 15 teams. So it's not even debatable for me. I know there's a lot of people out there who don't like that, who think that Algier should never that they and maybe you're right. Maybe they should never take in Bijan Robinson, but it's hard to argue that you don't take the guy who you believe is an future NFL Hall of Famer, and that's what they did with Bijan, right? So for me, I'm trading Algier because I'm not waiting on a 2027 comp pick. Right, I'm just not doing it. I'm trading him now so that I can either get free up some cap space. I can get a pick in 2026, and it's going to be a hell of a lot higher than that comp pick that you get in 2027. And so for me, that's why but I've made the same argument with Kyle Pitts, and it pisses people off. I'm trading Kyle Pitts now as well for those same reasons. I'm not trying to wait till 2027 to 2028 or any of those other years to get a comp pick. I'm just not. And those comp picks are never going to be equatable to what you can get for him with the actual trade. And for me, it's ridiculous to try to make the argument that you would rather just use him for this extra year and get a comp pick for him, because again, that comp pick is never going to be comparable to what you will get for him in a trade right now. And yes, by the way, NFL teams have inquired about whether he's available or not. So there is absolutely a trade market for him right now.
Yeah. And Jeff, you hit it on the head. Like with Kyle Pitts, first of all, the thing about him is we would have to wait a year, right? Like let's say he balls out this year, we don't sign him, we would get that comp pick in 2027. But the thing about Pitts is if he balls out, he'll actually get paid. So that comp pick could be a third, fourth rounder. With Tyler Algier, given the state of running back market, I don't know that we're gonna, even if he leaves us the following year, like that could easily just be a sixth or even a fifth round comp pick. We'd be lucky if it was a fifth because he's a backup running, but like he's not going to be given the floor to explode and earn a crazy contract out in the market. It's going to be high enough where we don't want to match it, but low enough where that comp pick's not going to be great. So if someone comes up to us and says like, hey, would you take a fourth next year for him? I think as much as I love him and I want him to stay, especially if Bijan gets hurt, like he could come in, take over, and help us out. But I would probably move on from him with a fourth round pick, and he's been great for us. But I think you hit it on the head with your Michael Turner comp. That's exactly the situation that it's in. Like we can't pay two running backs. There's no way it's going to happen.
If Miami said, hey, we want a third round and we want Algier for Ramsey, I'm giving it to him, right? I mean, you look at you look at Miami's depth chart at running back. Algier's running back number one. Like they don't have anybody comparable to what he brings, right? They've got Jalen Wright under contract, Devon Acne or Achaney, or I don't know how to spell his name. There you go. You've got Alexander Madison, you've got Ali Gordon II, and you've got Nate Noel. And those last two guys are rookies. So if that's a guy that's got to be included in the trade package, then so be it. But yeah, for me, again, I'm just not willing to take a 6th or 7th round comp pick for him, just so he can play one more year here in Atlanta. Give me what I can get for him now in the open market. Let me get better now, and let's move on.
So there's a lot of teams, Jeff, in my opinion, that could use him. Miami with A-Chain and Wright, I don't know about that one. But for example, like Jacksonville, he'd immediately step. He is way better than ETN and Bigsby or whatever. Like that's one. In Dallas, he'd run away with it. He would be the one. The Cowboys love to run the ball. Like that would be a great fit too. So there even, Jeff, what about the Steelers? I know they drafted Caleb Johnson, but geez, like Arthur Smith with Tyler Algier, the guy will have a field day in Pittsburgh running Algier up the middle. Like he is perfect for that Pittsburgh Steelers offense. So there's a lot of places where he can just slot in and take over the running back role.
Yep, and there's definitely a market for him, right? And so but we've talked about this on numerous episodes. The post June 1st kind of shuffle when it comes to cuts and additional free agency and all of those things. The Falcons have potential to be highly involved with several different moves to get even better.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the date to mark. We're going to see a lot more movement. come 6-1. We're only a little over a week away from that, so we'll see what we do. Hopefully we keep improving, and for me, more than Ramsey, Jeff, I just want these guys to address the center position. Like if we can get Nuzul under contract and bring in Andrews, I think I won't feel great, but I'll feel a lot better than I do right now about that position.
Oh, 100%. 100%. I think that David Andrews cures a lot of angst there for sure.
Yeah. So we'll see. We're close to that. But anyways, that brings us to the end of today's episode. Thank you to everybody listening in live and dropping in your comments in the chat. Really appreciate that. We'll be back around a similar time next week. We'll drop the link in. Always appreciate your guys' support. And honestly, we only go as far as you guys take us. We really appreciate it. You guys want more content, we'll keep rolling it out. We love doing this for you guys. We really appreciate you, and thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next week.